Welcome back to What Do You Know with Nick and Devin. I'm Nick.
I'm Devin.
Hey, happy Pride Month.
Happy Pride.
Nice. By this point, it's probably towards the end of Pride Month.
Depending on when we air this one.
Yeah, we'll see. You know. And if it's not, who fucking cares? It's a gay story. Okay, get used to them. What do you call it, Devin?
Yeah.
You took French in high school, right?
Oh yes. I took it for 7th, 8th, then freshman, sophomore year.
Oh, you didn't do junior, senior year?
No, I was like, fuck this. That's all I needed to take.
You didn't want honors French?
No. God, I was terrible. I wasn't terrible at French. I just didn't care.
There it is. There it is. What do you think of the French?
As a people?
Yeah.
Oh, I think they're fine. I don't really have many opinions on them. I think sometimes, as with a lot of like European countries that have high opinions of their culinary world, I think they get a little pretentious over it.
Sure.
But I mean, so do New Yorkers.
You just had to slip that in there, didn't you?
I did.
Every episode.
No, I think Paris is overrated, and there are way cooler things in the rest of the country.
I feel that.
I think they agree with me.
I've spoken to the French. Okay. I do love, I gotta say, like a side note, I watched this one girl on TikTok be like, I can't wait for the Paris Olympics because when we protested about retirement reform and then Macron like still passed it, she goes, we're gonna fuck up the Olympics as a French people. I was like, of course you are.
Oh yeah, I do. They do a good job of protesting. Like historically, they're pretty good at
protesting, and someone's always on strike about something in Paris. Yeah. How do you feel about pre-French Revolution Paris, like the opulence? And I mean, there's a lot of like classism, but like, yeah.
So you're gonna ask me how I feel about
how do you feel
bourgeoisie?
The aristocracy. How do you feel about that?
Can we play back some things?
Yeah, exactly.
Do I still have to answer?
No.
Okay,
I think we get it. I think people are reading between the lines on that one.
Great. It's a pretty big space to read.
So today, we're going to be settling around the late 17th, early 18th century.
Okay.
France.
Great.
We're going to be talking about Julie Dubeny. Do you know her?
No. I don't know. No.
Okay.
I don't.
Let me tell you more.
Phenomenal. So I don't know too much about like French history. There's a few names that I could probably remember if I went through the files.
Yeah.
No, French class didn't really teach me a lot of French history. It was just like teaching French. And of course, but I also got in trouble for saying bless you. I said it in French, not this way, to this girl that was just sneezing, and my French teacher was like, cut it out. I was like, excusez-moi, madame.
Cut it out for what?
I mean, she was just having like a bad sneeze day. It was probably like allergies. And so I was just like,
you kept on saying pussy?
Oh, this way. And then she was like, cut it out. And I was like, and then she sneezed again. And I was like, and I just like made eye contact with her across the class. And I just was like, this way.
And your teacher flipped a table? Yeah.
It was a good time. I didn't like that teacher.
Shocking. Shocking. Well, I also want to say before we start, I've written pronunciation guides for myself in my notes this time, which is great. But also, if things come out wrong, I apologize.
I mean, I don't think you have to lay on the French accent too thick.
No.
If you're not comfortable. So,
but there's some things where, and also like, the hard thing is you're like, okay, how do you pronounce this? And you put it into Google and like 18 different people say it 18 different ways. And you're like, but isn't there just one way to say this? You know what I mean?
Regional dialect difference.
It's a whole thing.
In France, yeah.
So what I did, and I'll be upfront about it, I went to Google Translate and I just typed it in the French section. I typed the French and then I hit listen. And that's the way that I'm doing this. Okay. So just so we all know. And
I've also noticed that you sometimes put like a Spanish twist on your French words. Oh my God. Which I think is kind of funny.
Someone said that to me when we went to London and Paris and we came back and I was talking to someone and I was like, oh yeah, like I was trying to say like, I was trying to speak French while we were in Paris just to like, be respectful.
Sure.
And they were like, you sound like a Spanish speaker speaking French. And I was just like, fuckers.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, look at that. Everyone gets a little bit of like a cultural melting pot in this podcast. Okay,
it's called fusion.
Right. Exactly. Fusion.
right. Who are we talking about again?
Julie Dubeny.
Julie. Let's go, Jules.
Yeah. Okay. She didn't like that.
All right.
Or also known as Mademoiselle Maupin or La Maupin. Maupin.
Okay, cool.
So, commonly known as a French opera singer from the late 17th, early 18th century, she was a bisexual, cross-dressing swordswoman who killed at least 3 men in duels.
Oh, dang. I thought it was just going to be like, oh, she did sword choreography on the stage. No, she fucking killed 3 people?
This woman, wild.
Incredible.
Let's
get into it.
Incredible.
Let's get into it.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, so she was born in 1673. There's some debate. 1673 or 1670, give or take.
Okay, that's not that drastic of a difference.
Or 1890. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
She was born in 1673 to Gaston Dubeny. Gaston was a secretary to Louis de Lorraine Guise, the Comte d'Armagnac, master of horses for King Louis XIV.
Oh, okay.
So Julie and her father first lived at the riding school, Tuileries Palace in Paris, before moving with the court to Versailles in 1682. So you have to remember, like, yes, he worked for the kind of Count of Horses, right? And like in the stables and all of those things, but that's kind of where everything happened when it came to like the servant and support staff in the palace. Like everything was there.
Okay.
And so Gaston would teach the pages, like the court pages, basically.
Sure.
So here Julie would spend most of her time in the great stables. Okay. I'll just say the English version. Gaston was an accomplished swordsman and trained the court pages. He taught his daughter academic subjects, but also trained her in fencing alongside the boys. So Julie dressed as a boy and excelled at fencing. She became completely competent by the age of 12 and competed successfully against men.
Oh.
By 14, though, in 1687, Julie had become Louis de Lorraine, the Comte d'Armagnac, her father's employer's mistress.
She became the mistress.
She became the mistress of her dad's employer.
At age 14?
14.
Yikes.
Remember, it's 17th century France.
No. Yeah.
I mean, 100%.
Still yikes.
Gross. But yeah.
But also like, wow, what a scandal. Not ignoring the age fact. Like, that's a scandal itself.
Right.
But like, scandal.
Right.
Scandal.
So, well, and then what happens is Lorraine arranged her to marry Sir Jean de Maupin of Saint-Germain-des-Lacs.
Oh, okay.
So he was like, you're going to be my mistress, but also while you're my mistress, I'm going to set you up to marry this guy.
That's
it's just like
weird.
Yeah. You're just like making it harder than it needs to be. And also she's 14.
Right. Yeah.
So this is how she becomes Madame de Maupin or La Maupin, which is apparently, I didn't know this, the latter, just like La Maupin, is like the French custom of when you are someone's wife. Like you are just La Maupin.
Okay.
So that's what we get. Monsieur Maupin soon received an admin position in the south of France as a tax collector given to him by the Count d'Armagnac. So Count d'Armagnac, mistress La Maupin, marries Monsieur Maupin. Then the Count's like, hey, how about you go get fucked to the south of France? So sends him off. She stays in Paris and continues the relationship with the Count. Like, why even set her up in the marriage then?
Right.
Just keep her as a mistress. She's
just
14.
Get her a nice room. It's fine.
Right. Like, whatever. So that all happens. Unsure of whether the Count became fed up with her wild ways or La Maupin tired of the Count, the same year after her husband left for the south of France, La Maupin became involved with her fencing master, Saran.
Oh.
Or Saran.
Love triangle.
Saran. Whatever. So, yeah, she would either, the Count was like, girl, you're fucking crazy. Or she was like, you're old, and I don't want to be here anymore. And
you're
so,
old news.
Right. So then she ends up hooking up with her fencing master.
Classic.
Love it. See ya. She's still 14, maybe 15 at this point. So Saran was being sought after at the time by Lieutenant General of Police due to killing a man in an illegal duel.
Oh.
Correct. So upon learning this, Siran...
Sorry. I just like to think of legal duels and illegal duels. Like, there are legal duels out there in order to have an illegal duel. Silly.
Well, I think at this time, unless it happened later, I believe Louis XIV had declared all dueling illegal.
Oh.
So just in general, at this time, duels were illegal. Sure. Yes. Which we get into more of that with her, too, down the road.
Perfect.
Amazing. So Siran was being sought after. Upon learning this, Siran and Julie fled together to Marseille. Which, Marseille to
South of
Paris,
France.
Yes, like southwest, is like, I don't know, like 8 hours or something like that. On the way south, the pair made a living by giving fencing exhibitions and singing in taverns and local fairs. So during this time, La Maupin dressed in men's clothing, but did not try to pass for male. She was just like, it's more comfortable.
It's easier to travel.
Fight in, like all of these things, right? So I have a note that says, I think she did it because it was comfortable. I don't think she was like, she wasn't trying to be a man. She was just like, I grew up wearing these things. It's helpful, whatever. Yeah. So during one of their exhibitions, one man at a tavern refused to believe that La Maupin was a woman. So she took off her blouse and stunned the crowd. She was like, you don't believe I'm a woman?
Bam.
Here are my breasts.
All right.
Boom. A la the Crazy Pirates.
Oh, yeah.
In the Alicia's episode. Just fighting with their tits out. So when they arrived in Marseille, La Maupin joined the opera company and began to sing under her maiden name, Dubany. So she never had any formal training singing at this point, but she just had kind of like a natural talent and they needed money. Right. So La Maupin caught the attention of a young woman while performing for the opera company, the daughter of a local merchant. Ooh, scandal. Shortly after, the girl's parents tried to hide her away in a convent in Avignon. So they were like, you're in love with this girl or something's happening. We're going to take you away and put you in a convent.
Okay.
So then La Maupin followed her love into the convent as a postulant.
Oh.
Which is like, I want to test this out before I give my full like self to the convent.
My 14-day free trial.
Correct. That's exactly what that is. 100%. So once inside, the two decided to make an escape and run away together.
Is this all while she traveled with her fencing mentor lover to Marseille?
Yes.
And then in that time, she was like, also married to this other guy that was married to Maupin, who was sent away to the south of France.
Correct.
She's done boning the Count.
Correct.
Okay, and so then she's still boning down with her fencing mentor, and then falls in. Then is like, you know what, this chick's pretty hot too, and then like goes to the convent away from everything.
Correct, because she's performing in the opera in Marseille.
Right.
Girl's like, you're gorgeous, and she's like, you know, you're pretty hot too. And then they kind of start a little thing, and she's like, fuck Siran, my swords teacher, and then goes to the convent to go after her.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes. Wow, caught up. She's all over the place. Promise you.
This is a tale.
Just you wait. So they decide that they're going to run away together. She's like, I'm here to free you from the convent. They're like, great.
Romantic.
So what was the plan? La Maupin stole the body of a recently dead nun, placed it in the bed of her now lover, and set the room on fire to cover their tracks.
Wow.
She's like, well, if they think you're dead,
they will come
then it's
for
perfect.
You.
Right. It just didn't really work. So they ran away together for 3 months before her lover returned to her family. So due to these actions, La Maupin was charged to death by fire.
Oh.
In absentia, which means like without being present, right? And as a male, for kidnapping, body snatching, arson, and failure to appear. So the judges could not admit the possibility of a woman abducting another, especially from a convent, so she was charged as a male. Like it says Sire, or whatever it is in French, like on the charges. Like it's Sire Maupin, or whatever it is. Yeah. Crazy. They're like, that couldn't have been a woman. Clearly a man did this. You're like, what? So after this, La Maupin headed back to Paris and continued to earn her living by singing. At an inn in Villeperdue, she met the young nobleman, Comte d'Albert, by literally bumping into him. he mistook her for a man and ended up dueling her. La Maupin won, of course, and injured him, but then nursed him back to health. They became lovers for a brief period of time, but ultimately lifelong friends.
Wow.
Gorgeous.
Enemies to lovers to friends.
Thanks, Daisy.
What a novel.
So then near Pute, sure, she met an old actor named Marshall who gave her singing lessons. So finally she's like, if I'm going to sing, maybe I should learn a thing or two. Right.
Yeah.
Instead of just like kind of winging it. So during this time, she met a new lover.
She didn't fall in love with her singing instructor?
No, because I think he was old.
So
she was like,
you remind me of the Count.
Right. Truly. So during this time, she met her new lover, singer, Gabriel Von Count Thévenard, a baritone. I'm just going to refer to him as Thévenard moving forward.
Okay, sure.
Cool. He was a baritone. I don't know why that was important, but I put it in my notes. The old actor, Maréchal, La Maupin, and Thévenard all went back to Paris together, where Thévenard and La Maupin became engaged with the Paris Opera. So they were like, now we're going to like big time. Paris Opera. Here we go. So while Thévenard auditioned, La Maupin went to visit her old lover, D'Armagnac, the old count, old guy, to convince him to arrange a pardon for her indiscretions in Provence.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's like, can you just like take care of that really quick? Hey,
remember
buddy.
These? And like undoes her blouse. Can you pardon these?
He's like, fine.
Right.
So he eventually agreed, and she is pardoned for her crimes by the king.
Wow.
So La Maupin was initially rejected by the opera. So remember, because they go back to Paris, she's like, okay, La Maupin befriended an elderly singer, Bouvard, in order for him and Thévenard to convince Jean-Nicot de Francais, master of the king's household, to accept her into the company. So ultimately, basically what happened was Thévenard was accepted in, and he was like, I'll only join the Paris Opera if you let her in too.
Okay.
And apparently he was a good enough baritone that they were like, sure, why not?
Yeah, a good baritone's hard to come by.
And
that's not true at all.
That's not true at all. There's plenty out there. And La Maupin was accepted and came to perform at the age of 17.
Wow, this all took place in 3 years' time.
Correct.
That's insane.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes. Jesus. I thought she was going to be like 20-something.
Nope.
All right.
So basically, Thévenard goes and auditions for the opera while she's like hitting it up with the count to get pardoned. Right. And then he's accepted, and he's like, oh, let her in because I'm getting in. And she comes back from the count being like, everything in Marseille is great. And then they're like, oh, by the way, you're in the Paris Opera now. She's like, sick. Right.
Everything's coming up with Paul.
Truly. So she debuted the same year she was admitted in 1690 as Pallas Athena in, Cadmus et Hermione. Okay. Hermione, sure. So Cadmus and Hermione, by Jean-Baptiste Lully. So just one of the big operas. From 1690 to 1694, over the course of 4 years, La Maupin started as a soprano, but slowly moved into the alto range.
Is alto lower?
Correct.
Okay.
So I think I have a note about this later, but I'll say it now. So alto was kind of the contralto was an Italian thing. The French didn't know people would sing that low, or women would sing that low.
Sure.
So she's the one that introduced basically France to altos.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because she eventually just couldn't sustain a soprano range. Like, it was out of her range. So
she's no longer 14.
Well, exactly. And she started to like gain the attention and like popularity enough to where she could kind of do that. You know what I mean? Which is kind of cool. So, the Marquis de Danjou once wrote in his journal after seeing La Maupin perform that hers was, quote, the most beautiful voice in the world.
Oh.
End quote. I was like, damn, got the hots for her. Nothing happened there, but he wrote about it. Right. Yeah, I know. Right. So, La Maupin performed in both Paris and Brussels under the name Mademoiselle de Maupin. By tradition, women were billed as Mademoiselle, whether or not they were married.
Okay.
It just was to attract attention, I think was the thing. It gives it like an allure.
Mm-hmm.
So why in Brussels, you might ask? Let me tell you.
I was just catching my breath before I could ask that question.
I'm sorry, I cut you off. That's my bad.
It's all right.
My Maupin. So, at a court ball in Paris, La Maupin, in men's clothing, kissed a young woman on the dance floor, which insulted 3 different noblemen, and they each challenged her to a duel. They're like, huh, that is
how dare you kiss another lady? I'm going to kill you.
Well, I think they saw her as a man. Because they wouldn't have challenged a woman to a duel.
I guess.
I think because the way that she was dressed, they were like kind of the same as like her guy that she bumps into and becomes her friend.
Sure.
I think that they were like, oh, challenge you to a duel. You don't just kiss women in the middle of a ball in a court.
What are balls for then? Other than kissing.
All the time. Other than kissing. Accurate. So they all challenged her to a duel. She told each of them individually she would meet him outside, where she ended up fighting them all at once. She, of course, beat them all at once.
Damn.
Yeah. And King Louis had outlawed duels at this point, so La Maupin had to flee to Brussels.
Oh.
Plus, she's at a court ball. Like, this is all noblemen. Like,
right. So why did
they even challenge her to the duel?
Yeah,
I know.
It was illegal.
Correct. I'm with you.
That's
but then
meant for you.
She got the bad end of the stick because she beat all of them.
Right.
And their wound was, you know what I mean? They're wounded. So while in Brussels, she became lovers with Elector of Bavaria. During one of her performances for the Brussels Opera, La Maupin stabbed herself on stage with a real dagger. She's like, I'm method acting.
Jesus.
So the Elector found her and instances to be a bit too much. So he offered her 40,000 francs to leave him alone. So she actually rejected the francs, but like stormed off anyway and went to Madrid.
Okay.
So while in Madrid, she worked as a maid to a Countess Marino, but resented the Countess. Which I was like, how do you go from like prominent opera singer in the Paris opera to singing in the Brussels opera to kind of having a fling with the Elector of Bavaria, and now you're a maid to a countess?
Right. Like, you are rubbing elbows with such high society people, right. And then you just kind of like, maybe I take a break from this. It
kind of just weird, right? So she resents the countess because she's probably just a rough countess.
Yeah.
So La Maupin took it upon herself to dress the countess's hair for a grand ball with radishes. So everyone at the ball, except for the countess, saw that her hair had radishes in it, and radishes were not in fashion.
No.
And so this clearly did not go over well. And La Maupin went back to Paris after being pardoned for her duels by the king.
Oh, wow.
So basically, the king's brother got involved and was able to help her get another set of pardons.
Now, before anyone asks, radishes are still not in fashion. I tried to bring them back in like 2018, but it didn't really work.
Try to as earrings. It's really heavy, really heavy. So
sent pockets full of radishes.
Anyone?
No one on the L really liked it.
Shocking. So now back in Paris and performing again at the Paris Opera, La Maupin appeared in most major productions, and even there's where my note is, and even was the one to introduce France to the alto voice.
Okay.
That was only done in Italy at the time. So La Maupin also performed for the court at Versailles many a time. They were like, sing.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay.
All right.
Okay, right now.
And you said, I'm sorry, you said that she had gotten her pardon for the 3 duels?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so the king's brother got involved and then had her pardoned.
Cool.
They're like, your voice is too good.
Jesus.
Probably not. She just probably, had some connections. So during this time, she continued to be brazen and a defender. So La Maupin... she was like a defender of people. Like she wanted to like.
Oh, okay.
I get into it. It was like a setup.
Sure. Okay.
But anyway, so
let's defender.
La Maupin would often defend chorus girls against lecherous barons and pompous tenors.
Some handsy folks, and she'd be like, "Get the fuck out."
Exactly.
I got
you. After performance, the singer Louis Goulart Dumany. Yeah, Louis Goulart Dumany was heard insulting the other women at the opera. La Maupin beat him in a duel over these words. She was like, no, go fuck yourself. You're not going to like harm my corpus.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, she's been training in sword fighting but also, right. I also think of duels as like gun, but at this time, right, exactly. It's all swords, which is kind of cool.
Very.
Honestly, we should bring duels back. Okay.
There's some road rages that are already trying to do that, so it's fine.
Touche. So, where was I? Okay. She also became infatuated with the soprano Fanchon Moreau, which was kind of an obsession of hers. At one point, she tried to kill herself. She also threatened to blow the Duchess of Luxembourg's brains out.
Okay.
And after attacking her landlord, she ended up in court.
That's what took her to court.
Yeah. This girl is all over the place. But the thing is that like she's chaotic, but she's still like a defender of good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's like, don't touch my people. Don't make fun of anyone that I know and that I love. Right. But also like, I'm going to be fucking crazy.
That's wild.
And this is 1700 France.
All right. All right. Onwards.
Right. So, of course, her and Thévenard remained close friends as they were both in the opera, but apparently had some infamous spats. One of which, she bit his ear so hard on stage during a performance, she drew blood. Why is she biting someone's ear in the middle of an opera?
What play were they doing? That's
exactly.
Insane.
Like, why were you that close? Bananas. So at this time, La Maupin continued to wear men's clothing in public and had relationships with both men and women, as we saw. So La Maupin's last lover was Madame de Marquis de Florensac, with whom she was, quote, dwelt in such affection they believed to be perfect, end quote. Very cute. So the Florensac was the, quote, most beautiful woman in France. Crazy, end quote. So beautiful that she also had to flee to Brussels for several years because the Dauphin, or the heir to the throne, was obsessed with her.
Was there nowhere else to flee? Why is
Apparently everyone went
to
Brussels. Yeah, I don't know. Right. Everyone loved Brussels at the time. She was... What's in Brussels? What's out? Radishes. She was also one of the most famous, wealthy, and well-connected women in France at the time.
Oh, okay.
The pair lived together for 2 years until La Florensac died in 1705 due to a fever.
Oh.
I know. After this, La Maupin retired from the opera and took refuge in a convent, quote, destroyed by an inclination to do evil in the sight of her God and a fixed intention not to, end quote.
Huh.
So basically I think she was just so overwhelmed and upset about her lover dying that she was like, if I'm out in the world, like, I'm just going to be so enraged. So I'll just go to a convent. Which I was like, they let you in? You tried to burn the last one you were in. Shocked. And then she is believed to have died there in 1707 at the age of 33.
Wow, 33?
33.
Damn.
So
I guess she burned the candle at both ends.
Truly. The last thing I have here is her legacy is kind of not really known, but also this guy, Théophile Gautier, wrote a story kind of based around La Maupin. Basically, he took her life and some of her characters and kind of started that as the starting point. So it's a mix of fact and fiction, kind of.
Yeah.
And it's called Mademoiselle de Maupin, which was published in 1835. The central character's life was viewed through a romantic lens as, quote, all for love. And Gautier argues for art's sake is kind of his infamous thing, right?
Sure.
Which I think we've all heard before. So basically, D'Albert and his mistress Rosette are both in love with the androgynous Théodore de Serran, whom neither of them knows is really Madeleine de Maupin. So it kind of plays into her kind of going between men's clothing and being a woman, but also like a man and a woman both loving her and this whole thing, right? So the celebration of sensual love, regardless of gender, was radical, and the book was banned by the New York Society for the Suppression of Vice and authorities elsewhere.
Oh.
So for a while, this was a banned book because it was, I mean, you had bisexuality, you had women dressing in men's clothing, you had all these things.
Right.
And so, which I feel like, at that time, especially in America, like a lot of Puritan standards and things of that nature, anything French was
crazy.
Yeah. Crazy. But yeah, that is La Maupin, or Julie de Dubany, or Mademoiselle de Maupin. I mean, you pick a name, and she had it. But I love that it was like this really small kind of fleck of history of a bisexual woman in the 17th, 18th century. France,
she just did so much. That was wild. Just so many duels.
My thing is just like, what I loved is that, like, yes, she had some influence within like the culture and things that kind of came out of that, right? So like there is a little bit more of her like in the opera world. Like obviously she introduced the alto range. Yeah. She was able to kind of help people write operas, and she would perform them and all of those things. So she had influence there. But she's not like the most prominent member at that time. But like this small blip of history where she was like, I'm a bisexual, and what about it? Like I'll burn down a convent to like get my girlfriend out.
I'm gonna blow your brains out.
Right, 1697 France. Like that's the cool thing, right? I mean, that's like what we talked about in last week's episode with Alan Hart. Like this kind of, there are these little glimmers of like acceptance and people trying to be who they are at times where it seems so impossible to even think that would be possible. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I also love that she was just all over the place, and she's like, you don't like me, I'll fucking stab you.
Right. Yeah.
And just then I'll stab myself.
Chaos across France. Right. Just trying to live her old life.
Right. Well, and I love that, like, because her father worked for the court, like that, of course, got her very well connected in a lot of ways. But I wonder if like that wasn't there. Like, what would it, you know what I mean? Would she have been so bold and brazen? You know? Yeah. But anyway, so that's the story of Julie Dubany.
That's crazy. I can't believe she only lived to 33.
I know.
That's wild.
I think it had to have been some sort of fever or illness of some sort.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't the cleanliest time to be in France.
Right.
Yikes. So just like to have such a fast, hot life.
Right.
From, I mean, granted, like all of the story started at 14 to 33, just cramming it all in.
Right.
Wild.
Well, and what's interesting, so I just watched Franklin on Apple TV, which is just Michael Douglas.
Yeah, we kind of talked about it a couple episodes ago.
Oh, yeah. So, and that's, 1770s France.
Right.
So even 70, 80 years earlier, like she's kind of, like, you watch that and you go, in no way would you ever see a woman dressed in men's clothing, like all of these things, and that's 80 years down the road, and she's just out here doing what she wants.
Good for her.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's to you.
Here's to you, Julie. La Maupin.
La Maupin.
La Maupin.
Well, thanks for this story.
Yeah. Thank you. Just another fun little like flicker of, of a gay queer story in the world. So we've always been around. All right. Just want to throw that out there. But thank you so much for sticking around. Everyone, thank you for liking, subscribing, following, all of the things. Please continue to do so. You can find us at WDYK_podcast across all social media platforms. And that's all I got. So bye.
Thanks. Bye.